Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this series. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I thought finally here in this video series, I will show you how you can call these store procedures for the R services from external tools such as Excel. So what I have here is an Excel workbook that I created, and it looks something like this. I want to show you how you can use PowerQuery to connect to SQL Server and get the data from the R services. So I'm using Office 365 and this Excel workbook here. Go to the Data tab. In order to get data from SQL Server, you'll have to create a PowerQuery. And you can initially, when you do this, you can go to this Get Data, and you can say from database, from SQL Server database, this one. And the database is optional. I'm just going to use this test DB. And there's also advanced option, and this is where you want to paste in your execute statement. I'm going to run this store procedure here, get PA cap M, and I say OK. And as you can see, the data came back here. And what I can do is I can just load it, and I can say load to, and I'll just pick a new worksheet here, and I'll say OK. And it will run the query, and it will come back and populate the table. So now you can see a table was loaded. So that's the method I use to get this, and I have some other procedures that I created, and I did a couple of tweaks that I'm going to show you in this section. Now that we showed how to run an initial query from SQL R services, let's take a look at how you can replicate this process a little faster so you can call different store procedures without going through that tedious connection from the Data tab. So in the Data tab here, we went and set get data, and we went from database and so forth. What I want to do, as you can see here, I already created some queries here. So let me show you how you can kind of get to this a little faster. So I have this get table stats, and I can say edit. It will open up the PowerQuery window. And in the PowerQuery window, you can go to this View tab and go to this Advanced Editor. When you click there, you will see the this is what Microsoft called the M language, M for Max. And this language let you do all these steps in PowerQuery. It adds to this, add new lines for every step you take. So as you can see over here, it only sits at the source step. And my query name is get table stats, as you can see over here in a properties pane. So what I can do is I can just copy this, close that down, and I can close this out. And then I can go to get data. I say from other sources, blank query. I go in here and go to view, go to advanced editor again, and I can simply override this like this. And so whatever your store procedure is, you could just replace this part with that store procedure name. And of course, as long as you're pointing to the same database and the same server. So that's all you need to do. And if I say done, and I did this, it's the same query as we saw. But what I want to do is I can go back to Home tab and say close and load to, and then I can pick just a new worksheet again. So I say OK. And now that query will run. You can see it down here, query 1. And here's the result. So then you can repeat that process for every store procedure you have. So let me get rid of this. Delete. Okay, so let me show a couple of different things I did. So for this get table cap M, I did, instead of getting it across like a horizontal like this, like this table has, notice I pivoted around here. And that's pretty straightforward to do in PowerQuery. And what I did was I took this get table cap M, and I did a couple of more steps to the query itself. So as you can see here, the source looks like this. That's the result of the query. But then I did this unpivoted thing. And these unpivoted, in order to do that, you go to this transform tab, and you can say unpivot column, like so, or you can say pivot column. So the steps that I did, as you can see here in the advanced editor, the second step is this unpivoted other columns. And I'm saying this, unpivoted other columns. So I unpivoted the symbol attribute value column, and I chose it from the source. So if you do this step here, that will unpivot those columns. So let me do this from scratch and show you again how this will work. So I'm going to get rid of these two. You can delete it like I'm doing here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to this transform. And what I'm going to say is I want to unpivot other columns except for the symbol column. And as you can see, it moves it into this format now. So the symbol gets repeated for every one of these. And then what I want to do is I want to say the next step should be to pivot the column. And the column I want to pivot is the values. And as you can see, now it's been pivoted around. So now you have the same format as you can see over here that I built here. And that's how you can run that formatting or unpivoting and pivoting, so you get a different look and feel for your table. Let's do one more thing now. You can see I built 3 different store procedures here. And I will go back to showing you how those store procedures, what they look like in a little bit. But I have another example here I want to show you. So if you go to this sheet 1, what I done here is I just did a select distinct from the database from my table. And the table is stocks. So if you say select top and you just remove this stuff and you say distinct and remove the other columns here. So the query looks like this. Then I run it. And as you can see, these values comes back. So I took that list and I put it into Excel. And I just pasted it here. And I removed the S&P 500 because I'm not interested in looking at that. So there is all the values. And then what I did was I wanted to do a parameterized query in PowerQuery. In order to do that, you create a little table like this, and you give it a name, parameter and value as a header. And then I simply call my value is symbol. That's the one I want to do. Send the parameter as whatever the symbol is. And then I went in and I built a new list. So you go into data and you go and you create a new data validation list. Okay. And when you do, it opens up with windows like this. Make sure you choose the list here. And what you also want to do is you want to highlight the source where the data comes from, which is this group right here, except for the header. You don't need that. So that's your list. And then you can, if you want an input message, you can do. I just put one for errors in case there's a problem. So I put a little message here, and that's my list. So now you can see I can drop and choose whatever value I want. And if I change something into something that is not there, and I say, and you'll get that error message. So that seems to be working. Okay, so I'll choose a value, and then I created a macro. I like to do that, put a design mode here, and right click and go to view code. And this is my code. So when I run that, this is what it runs. It runs my connections and the name of the PowerQuery that I want to run, and it uses this refresh. I'll get back to this in a second here, but you can see by running this code, if I step through it, I can hit F8, just put my cursor inside here, hit F8, and start stepping through it. And then I created a variable called con as a variant. So whatever data type it is, whatever object it is, it just picks it up. And then I created this a as string here, which is not, it's not really needed here. But so I do a for each loop based on this variable in the connections for the active workbook, print out the name. And so as you step through here, you can see it keeps printing below here. So that's how I came up with what the names of these connections are, okay? So now that I got that, I just picked the right one. So the one I'm interested in for this particular example is this one here. So it's called Query Get PA Annual Returns. And that's the one that I put into this value here. So that's how I set up this macro to run. And by the way, to get to this window, all you have to do is hit Alt F11. That will open it up. And that's how I linked this macro to this button here. Now that we have the button linked to the macro, I put it in design mode here and right click. You can see the view code, this one I'm running. So now I got a connection to those. And let me take it out of design mode. By the way, this is an ActiveX control that I created. And so I just did insert and chose an ActiveX button. And then I just wrote the properties, I fixed them up. So if I go here and right click and I go to properties and look at the property window, you can see it looks like this. So this is the name of the query. This is the name of the button. And this is the name of whatever I put in the caption area. So you can see it here. And then I just double clicked on it to get to the code here, like this. Okay, so now you're here. All right, so there's the macro. And what this one does, it's going to use whatever value you choose from this drop list here and place it in here. It's going to run a function that I created in PowerQuery. And it's called fn get symbol. So if we added the function fn get symbol, let me bring it up. And we'll go to View, Advanced Editor, and this is what it looks like. Now it's a little small, so I copied that into a notepad so you can see what it actually says in there. So here you can see what is inside this fn get symbol. So we're passing in this parameter name variable, that's a text, and it's going to be passed into the function by using this equal greater than sign. And we grab it in the let statement. We create a variable called parent source. We set it equal to this Excel current workbook we're in. And then there's some squiggly marks you use here. And the name is going to be this parameters tree. And this parameters tree is the table that it comes from. So let me see if I can bring that up. I might have to get out of here so I can show you. So inside here, if you go to your named list, well, you could do it this way too. You can go to formulas, you can go to name manager, and you can see this parameter 3 is pointing to sheet 1, C5 through D5. So that's what it's pointing to. So in other words, another way you can do this, go up here, just choose parameters 3, and you can see it highlights these two. So that's the range for this parameters 3. Okay, so the next step in that function is to get the content of that. So those two cells is the content. Then we create a param row variable that is pointing to the table selected rows, which are these. We selected those two cells we selected here. And for each, it's going to grab the parameter name, okay? And it's going to set the value by using an if statement. So if the table is empty, if that's the case, just return a null. Otherwise, grab the field for this param 0 value, okay, which will be this field here, the symbol for the value. And once you have that, we're going to simply return the last parameter we created inside this let clause, which is called value. So that's what we're passing out from here. And this store procedure is going to consume this. If you open this and you go to the query editor and you look at advanced settings, you can see I have a variable called symbol that I create that is calling that function, and I'm passing in the word symbol. Okay, that comes from that table. That's that field, if you will. And if you look here, it's going to call my store procedure called annual return, and I do an and symbol, which is this value here. So I'm calling this with the ticker symbol, and that's how I'm calling the store procedure. So when you run this, if I right click, I have the macro now, so I can pick a value here, for example, AbbVie, and run it. And as you can see, it runs, and it came back with the result from that store procedure using the R services for AbbVie. And that's how you can call it in a more dynamic way from an Excel workbook. So now that you've seen how we can call a store procedure from Excel and passing in a parameter, let's see what it actually looks like in SQL Server. So the one it was calling is this PA annual return. So let me script that out as create. And as you can see here, I'm passing in a parameter here as a varchar 50. And you might recall in the PowerQuery, it was that value you passed in as a text string, and that's being passed on from PowerQuery to SQL Server here as a text varchar 50. If you look at this, I have a select statement, and you've seen some of this before, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Just refer to my previous videos for these queries. The only difference here is that I'm using a where clause where the ticker is equal to ticker. And so this symbol is getting passed in to this store procedure, and that symbol is coming in here. So the one that I'm passing into the store procedure, I'm creating another variable called ticker here and set it equal to the value I'm passing into the store procedure here. So this one. And now that I have another value here, the ticker, I'm referring to it in this params variable. The params variable is where you set your parameters you want to pass into R, okay? Use that name. And you prefix it with this literal symbol here, and this ticker is what I called it. And that's a varchar 50. And that ticker gets picked up in the actual data you're loading in to R. So as you can see here, it's part of this. And what I can do now is I can group by ticker, which is the only symbol coming in. In our case, it was AbbVie. So AbbVie, group by AbbVie. You don't need to group here because there's only one ticker, but I use this store procedure for other things too. So I just left it like this. And what it does is adds this column by calculating daily returns. And then I just create a variable called annual returns, abbreviated and ret, is equal to whatever this data frame is. And then I'm passing in this data frame, and there is nothing to compare to. There's no index you're comparing to here in this particular table. And the function is going to be these table annualized returns from this tidyquant. And actually, it's from the performance analytics underlying this. So as you can see, again, we're using our own named out data here. And I'm simply loading the results from here into that out data so it can get passed back to SQL Server. And now that SQL Server gets the output again, I simply create these columns here with the result set. And that's the one that you're going to get when you actually run this. So if I wanted to test this, I can right click, script as execute, and then I need to set the symbol equal to, let's say we do ABBV, right? So something like that. Then when I run it, it comes back with that whatever symbol I passed in. So it's running. And that's how you create a store procedure that you can pass parameters to. Hope this was helpful. And that's the end of this video series. And hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.